Hajime is a loser weakling who got betrayed by his classmates and left to die alone. However, after eating monsters and absorbing their abilities, he becomes the strongest hunter in the world. Now, he will form a team of baddies to help him get his revenge and get crazy along the way. It all started in a cave where Hajime finds himself lying in the middle of the great Orcus labyrinth. As he scans this creepy Jeffrey Epstein-themed dungeon, he realizes that he must remain sharp to survive the night. But just as he scans through the forest, Hajime witnesses a bizarre, small, rabbit-like creature slaughtering a pair of wolf monsters as if they owe him lunch money. However, the hierarchy of the dungeon is quickly made clear when an apex predator emerges from the darkness, decapitating the rabbit instantly and treating its remains like a jelly donut. Terrified by the raw power of the beast, Hajime tries to run away like a chick, but the creature strikes almost instantly and ends up severing Hajime's dominant hand. As the monster begins to feast on his severed limb, Hajime is forced to act on pure instinct, and he channels his unique transmutation ability to reshape the surrounding environment. This power creates a temporary barrier that allows him to escape the immediate threat. Hajime retreats through the tunnels that are filled with baby oils, but the severe blood loss eventually takes its toll, causing him to lose consciousness. However, when Hajime wakes up, he finds himself in the presence of a legendary glowing sacred crystal, and realizes it as a mythical monostone. Realizing this liquid has miraculous healing properties, Hajime thinks of using it to get his energy back. He then remembers the time when he and his classmates had entered the labyrinth together on a mission to gain powers, thinking they would activate their Rasengan. At that moment, Imanogawa, a genius student who encouraged him to work harder, saved him, and they also discovered a cluster of rare knowledge crystals. Like a complete dummy, a curious classmate ended up touching one of the stones, which triggered a stupid little trap that teleported the entire group into a room filled with demonic creatures. During the ensuing chaos, the group's magical defenses began to fail against the overwhelming number of enemies. In an act of selfless bravery, Hajime used his transmutation powers to hold the line, providing cover so his classmates could retreat across a bridge. Unfortunately, his loyalty was met with ultimate betrayal when a member of his own team intentionally struck him from behind. This treachery caused Hajime to fall from the collapsing bridge, plummeting into the deepest, most dangerous levels of the abyss. Now, Hajime finds himself unable to reconcile the pain of this betrayal with the memories of Kari, a healer who had promised to stay by his side and protect him because of her own personal dreams. Driven by a primal urge to live, Hajime manages to trap two wolf-like monsters and, in channeling his inner Bear Grylls, begins to consume their raw flesh. But this ends up triggering a violent and agonizing mutation within his body. As the little Japanese Chungus screams in pain, his DNA is rewritten, his hair turns white in color, and his physical strength reaches superhuman levels, effectively stripping him of his ability to feel pain. Within seconds, his status plate confirms the transformation, revealing that his level has increased exponentially, and he has acquired new abilities, such as lightning-based magic and the predatory traits of the four-legged beasts. Now possessing a more tactical mind, Hajime uses his transmutation skills to gather rare ores and magical stones from the cave walls. So he meticulously crafts a sophisticated revolver-style firearm which he names Donner. Then, to complement the weapon, he manufactures specialized explosive rounds, preparing himself for the battles he might face ahead. At this point, Hajime is no longer a victim, so he tests his new equipment on another rabbit monster and neutralizes it effortlessly. He then starts feasting on its flesh like a complete savage to further bolster his level. Now, Hajime sets his sights on the original predator that had taken his arm. When he finds the location of the beast, he boldly challenges it, declaring his intent to unalive and devour it. Furious, the monster lunges at him, but Hajime leaves the attack on read and retaliates with a barrage of gunfire from Donner. This battle goes on for some time, and when he finally finds an opening, Hajime manages to blast off one of the monster's limbs. Then, like a savage Chungus he is, he eats the limb right in front of the creature. He concludes the fight by subjecting the monster to a lethal surge of electricity before delivering a final, fatal shot to its skull. Having evolved into a formidable warrior who refuses to submit to death, Hajime's singular focus is now to destroy anything that blocks his path to the surface. As his power continues to swell, his journey through the dungeon remains fueled by a relentless determination to escape, even with the physical reminder of his missing arm. On the other hand, in a different sector of the labyrinth, a mysterious young girl is seen imprisoned by some powerful entity. After his victory against the monsters, Hajime finally sits down like an Indian priest and devours the creature he just defeated. However, he soon realizes that consuming the same types of monsters over and over isn't increasing his power levels anymore. Hajime finds out that he must now hunt more dangerous creatures if he wants to keep surviving in this hellhole. While he briefly considers the idea of using his transmutation abilities to simply dig a path out of the labyrinth, he quickly realizes how risky that would be. He remembers that the Great Orcus Labyrinth is said to have 100 levels, and since he has no way of knowing his current depth, trying to tunnel out like Jeffrey Epstein could be a massive disaster. Meanwhile, the pitch-black environment remains a constant obstacle, prompting Hajime to light a lamp so he can see where he's going. This small light attracts a sneaky lizard monster that uses its mystical gaze to turn the entire lamp into solid stone. Just then, the creature begins to crawl up Hajime's own arm, but being an alpha Chungus, he remains composed. He quickly pours water over his limb to stop the process and restore his mobility. Proving that he has become a much more efficient predator, Hajime outplays the lizard and shoots it dead without hesitation. While Hajime is navigating the underground depths in the royal palace, his classmates are struggling to explain their failure to the king. They recount the harrowing events from their expedition into the Great Orcus Labyrinth, explaining how a hidden trap on the 16th level caught them off guard and instantly warped the entire group down to the 65th level. It was there that they faced the behemoth, a monster of such overwhelming power that it would make Madara Uchiha leak fluids down his leg. The king, however, is far from sympathetic. He becomes extremely annoyed by their report and harshly reminds the students that they were summoned to this world to be champions of war, not to create dumb excuses. On top of that, the king's advisor reveals that humanity is on the verge of collapse. It turns out that the demons have discovered how to control monsters, putting the human kingdom in a desperate struggle for survival. He then explains that the students weren't just dropped into this world for no reason. They were brought here by the prayers of the people to serve as a shield against total destruction. As these heavy truths are laid out, Shizuku finds her mind drifting to her friend Kaori. She remembers a promise they shared, where Kaori, despite being a healer and not a natural-born fighter, vowed to stand by Shizuku's side and fight through the danger. During this meeting, Shizuku also notices one of her other teammates, Hayama, acting incredibly strangely and talking to himself like a schizophrenic dummy. When she tries to check on him, Hayama reacts as if he's seen some girl's massive milk container and quickly runs away. This bizarre encounter makes Shizuku recall the long-standing friction between Hayama and Hajime, making her wonder what is really going on in his head. Eventually, Shizuku visits Kaori, who has finally woken up after being unconscious for 5 long days. The moment she regains her senses, Kaori's only thought is of Hajime's safety. When she learns that he is still missing and presumed dead within the labyrinth, she is overwhelmed with grief and breaks down in tears. Seeing this, Shizuku does her best to console her friend and vows to find a way to get him back at any cost. Deep below the surface, Hajime continues to push forward through the dangerous floors of the dungeon. Eventually, he comes across an enormous gate that is held shut by several strange, complex locks. His attempt to open the door triggers a defensive mechanism, waking up 2 nearby monsters that immediately launch an attack. Hajime doesn't hesitate for a single second, firing a shot directly into the eye of the first creature and dropping it where it stands. The second monster proves to be more difficult, blocking his shots and putting up a fight. However, Hajime the Sigma Chungus remains perfectly calm as he reloads his weapon. He notices that the beast won't move very far from the entrance, leading him to believe it is guarding something of extreme importance inside the chamber. When the creature lunges for another attack, Hajime unleashes a hypercharged strike that eliminates the threat for good. After the dust settles, he searches the area and finds 3 glowing orbs, which he realizes are the keys to the gate. He then places them into the locking mechanism, and the massive doors finally swing open. Stepping inside like a freaky Japanese auto worker, he finds a dark room filled with a thick, strange, magical energy that hangs heavy in the air. In the center of this chamber, a young girl is sealed away inside a massive block of stone. Initially, Hajime's instinct is to turn around and leave, believing that getting involved isn't worth the risk, but he stops when the girl begins to scream for help. He is still wary, thinking that someone sealed so deeply in a dungeon must be dangerous, but when the girl mentions that she has also been betrayed, he finds common ground with her like a beta simp and changes his mind. As they continue talking, the girl reveals her true identity as a powerful vampire who once sought to protect her own people. But due to her incredible strength and her ability to heal from any wound caused by her uncle, the kingdom's ministers feared her. Because they couldn't figure out a way to kill her, they chose to betray her and seal her in this prison forever. For the first time in a very long time, Hajime feels a genuine sense of connection and decides he can actually trust her. He uses his transmutation and raw strength to break the seal, finally freeing her from her long imprisonment. Despite the fact that the girl is completely unclothed, both she and Hajime maintain a poker-faced, stoic demeanor as they face one another. Hajime introduces himself, and when he asks for her name, the girl expresses a desire to move on from her past and refuses to use her old title. In response, Hajime gives her a new name, Yue, which means moon, because her presence in that dark, desolate room reminded him of exactly that. Overjoyed by her freedom and her new name, the girl excitedly hugs Hajime. However, their moment of relief is cut short when a volley of arrows is suddenly fired at them from the shadows. Without a second thought, Hajime moves to shield Yue like a Japanese Andrew Tate, taking the hit and injuring himself to ensure her safety. Right after surviving the previous clash, Hajime quickly retrieves the healing magical water and applies it to his injuries. Meanwhile, Yue works to extract the arrows still stuck in his back like a tie worker. They soon spot an enormous crab-like monster firmly planted right at the only exit, making their escape almost impossible. So Hajime passes his jacket over to Yue, puts her onto his shoulders, and prepares himself to battle the low-level anime threat. He quickly unleashes a barrage of gunfire, but the rounds barely scratch the monster's armored body. Meanwhile, the beast responds by barreling toward them with terrifying speed and power. He keeps firing everything he has. As defeat seemed moments away and the monster prepared to overwhelm them, Yue finally chose to act like a blonde idiot. She drops down from his back and bites into Hajime, eagerly consuming his blood. Thanks to the immense mana coursing through his system, His blood provided the rapid energy boost she desperately needed to recover. During the time Yue replenishes herself, Hajime relies on his transmutation powers to form temporary barriers and distractions, holding the monster at bay. When she finally regains her strength, Yue releases a gigantic blue energy wave known as Azure, slamming it straight into the creature's head. Although the strike is powerful, the monster refuses to fall, leaving Yue completely drained and collapsed. However, Hajime motivates his side piece for one final attempt, convinced that synchronizing their attacks would seal its fate. Yue accepts the offer, but notes that her follow-up would lack the same force. So, Hajime pulls the monster's focus away and signals her to fire without hesitation. As her Azure Blast connects, he scrambles up the beast body and delivers a direct close-range shot, finally putting an end to the monster. Sometime later, while the two of them are busy consuming the meat from their defeated enemy like Jeffrey Epstein, Hajime lightly commented that vampires had supposedly vanished from the world 300 years earlier, implying Yue had to be at least that ancient. However, she responds with a furious stare, clearly irritated by the remark about her age. Hajime further asks if she had any knowledge about their current location, or a possible route out of the labyrinth. Hearing this, Yue confesses that she knows very little, but what she does know is that this entire maze had been built by the Mavericks, rebellious former divine messengers who once plotted to overthrow the gods and annihilate the world. Eventually, their grand scheme collapsed, forcing them to hide away in the deepest parts of this same dungeon. After the lame story time, the two continue their journey through the tunnels, where Hajime finds some rare high magic ore and immediately starts forging himself a brand new rifle. Seizing the moment, Yue bombards him with numerous questions regarding his background. Stuck with this dim-witted chick, Hajime is forced to tell her the complete truth. He describes being summoned along with his classmates by the gods to wage war against demons, only to discover he possessed no useful combat talents. The rest of the group constantly labeled him worthless. Matters escalated horribly when a so-called ally betrayed him mid-mission, dropping him into the endless abyss where he lost his arm. Since that traumatic fall, Hajime had committed himself to surviving through any method possible, no matter how brutal, even devouring human flesh for power. Hearing his painful experiences leaves Yue feeling extremely sad, but Hajime quickly clarifies he wants no sympathy from her annoying little dumpers and just wants to go home. However, Yue softly reveals that she herself has no home left to go back to, and this revelation hits him like a power equipment. Moved by this, Hajime extends an invitation for her to accompany him, assuring her that she will always have a spot with him, regardless of where he goes. Before long, a pack of ferocious dinosaur-type monsters starts relentlessly hunting them down. Despite running as fast and far as they could, the creatures have no intention of stopping. The duo eventually realizes that peculiar parasitic flowers are attached to the monsters' heads, potentially manipulating their behavior. After a tense escape from the horde, Yue once more drinks Hajime's blood like a corn actress to restore her vitality. Following that, they step into an odd chamber filled with drifting green mist. Without any warning, Yue suddenly launches at Hajime, as her mind and body are now overtaken by the parasitic flowers. Hajime soon realizes a repulsive flower monster is causing this behavior. The creature apparently took hold of Yue and compelled her to fire several shots directly at Hajime. It even attempts to seize control of his mind using the same parasitic method, but he successfully brushes off the attacks. Internally tormented, she pleads for him to end her suffering, yet Hajime takes careful aim at the controlling flower on her head. The precise shot breaks the monster's grip on her. He then immediately fires another attack that eliminates the grotesque creature for good. Afterward, Hajime settles down to eat additional monster meat and offers some to Yue, but she turns it down like a classic situationship girlfriend. Moments later, they proceed down a lengthy staircase, eventually arriving at the 100th floor. In that area, they discover an unusual pond, and past it looms a giant door. Sensing something significant waiting on the other side, Hajime approaches confidently and swings the massive gate open. Now, just as they start heading inside the chamber, a massive multi-headed dragon monster suddenly lunges out and charges right at Hajime. The beast spits a fireball straight at him, but Hajime dodges it cleanly and starts blasting away with his gun like Keanu Reeves. At first, it looks like he's taken the monster down for good, but then this pale white monster shows up. This one has strong healing powers and quickly brings the dragon back to life, along with several other creatures around it. That's when they understand the white monster is the real problem here. As long as it's still standing, the other beasts just keep regenerating. So, the animated Japanese idiots shift their focus and decide they have to take it out first. Right in the middle of all this, Yue gets hit by some kind of illusion. She suddenly sees Hajime walking away and leaving her behind, and she panics, crying out in fear. But it's all fake. Hajime quickly grabs her and jumps them both out of immediate danger. By now, Yue has passed out from the mental attack. Seeing this, Hajime gives her a recovery potion, and she slowly comes back around. Once she's awake, they both get their heads straight and agree they need to wipe out all these monsters like cum shots and make it out alive. So, Hajime pulls out his rifle and rains down a heavy barrage of shots from above. At the same time, another illusion tries to mess with Yue, but she shakes it off fast and fights back. A different one hits Hajime, but it doesn't even faze him. Instead, he just steps up and shoots the monster right in front of him. As they team up perfectly, Hajime locks onto the white monster with his rifle, while Yue unleashes her powerful Heavenly Blaze spell, burning through a bunch of enemies at once. The attack takes so much out of her that she collapses right after. Even though they've cleared out a lot of the monsters, the white one is still alive and comes at them hard from above. Moments later, Hajime jumps in front of Yue to shield her, but the hit knocks his weapon away and leaves him badly hurt. This causes him to slam into the ground, and he starts bleeding heavily, which freaks Yue out. Even then, the white dragon keeps pressing the attack, and things are getting really dangerous. But Yue refuses to give up, and she lifts Hajime with her magic and tries to escape while the monster chases them down. When it gets too close again, Yue grabs the gun romantically as if she's grabbing a sausage and fires straight at its head. As expected, the shot makes the dragon go wild, spraying flames everywhere. The blast knocks Yue down hard and she drops the gun. Just as the stubborn beast is about to strike her again, Hajime suddenly shows up and saves her at the last second, like a Bollywood actor. He then picks her up in his arms and asks for her magic support so they can finally finish this thing off. Immediately, Yue gets ready while Hajime keeps pouring bullets into the monster. He plants bombs along a nearby wall, climbs right up in front of the dragon's face, and fires at point-blank range. Seconds later, he triggers the bombs, bringing the whole wall crashing down on top of it. In one last desperate move, Hajime uses his transmutation skill and tells Yue to hit it with her Azure Blaze. She then pours everything into the spell, and the combination creates a massive explosion that finally destroys the white monster. But the effort completely drains Hajime, and he collapses right after. Back at the palace, Aiko, the teacher looking after the summoned students, is clearly upset. She keeps complaining about how wrong it is to throw young kids into deadly fights like this, clearly not knowing how savage Jeffrey Epstein was. It turns out that one of her students has already died, and the fear is spreading through the whole group. The king listens calmly and simply says that nobody is being forced to fight. Meanwhile, deeper in the labyrinth, Kaori and her party keep moving forward, but she can't seem to stop thinking about Hajime. Kaori is clearly worried about what happened to him, but her classmates try to pull her focus back on their mission first. A few hours later, Hajime gradually regains consciousness and finds himself resting on a bed when he suddenly opens his eyes. Upon looking around, he is startled to see Yue beside him in a state of undress. Before he can even process the situation or ask for an explanation, she pulls him close like Lisa Ann, revealing that she had been terrified that he had succumbed to his injuries. Yue goes on to clarify their current location, explaining that they have found safety within the Maverick's lair. She details the events following their battle, noting that Hajime had completely passed out from exhaustion, prompting her to use the holy water to facilitate his recovery. Deeply grateful for her care, Hajime offers his gratitude, and they soon head outside to scan their new surroundings. A few hours later, they find a massive palace, and when they cross one of the chambers, the room is instantly bathed in light. In the center lies a majestic throne and a motionless skeleton, sitting as if it were Jesus himself. While observing the room, Hajime speculates that this specific area might hold the secret to an exit leading back to the surface world. However, as he steps onto a glowing magical seal glued into the floor, the skeletal figure starts moving. The spirit inhabiting the remains identifies himself as Oscar, the legendary architect of this very labyrinth. He offers his congratulations to Hajime for successfully enduring the many trials of the dungeon. When Hajime attempts to ask some questions, Oscar quickly interrupts, clarifying that he is merely a pre-recorded magical projection like ChatGPT and can't answer new questions. Deep in the heart of the Great Labyrinth, Oscar Orcus, or at least the lingering fragment of his soul, explains his final purpose. He didn't build this sanctum for glory, he built it as a final testament for whoever was strong enough to survive the descent. As Hajime begins to unearth the hidden history of their world, the scene shifts drastically to the 65th floor, where his former classmates are struggling through their own nightmare. Shizuku pauses, catching her breath, feeling the weight of their progress. To the rest of the students, reaching this floor feels like a historic feat, like they might win a Nobel Peace Prize. However, they have no idea that while they celebrate surviving the mid-tier levels, Hajime is 40 floors deeper, unraveling ancient conspiracies and staring down god-level threats like a professional Reddit moderator. Meanwhile, Amanagawa tells the group to stay sharp. His intuition is on point, but it doesn't stop the shock when the massive behemoth, the same beast that supposedly killed Hajime, tears through the darkness. The party freezes for a split second, haunted by the memory of their last encounter. But they've grown into experienced fighters at this point. Now, the fight is chaotic. As Kaori steps up first, her voice steady as she tells the monster its reign is over. Amanagawa meets the beast's charge head-on, while his blade clashes against its hide. Just then, a trio of students is nearly sent over a ledge by a tail swipe, but Kaori's magic anchors them just in time. She's the heartbeat of the team, weaving healing spells into the fray while Shizuku keeps the front line from collapsing under a wave of skeletal minions. Despite this, the behemoth tries one last desperate move, leaping over the tank to target the support in the rear. A girl catches the blow on her shield, but the impact is bone-shattering. Before the defense can crumble, Kaori's light magic surges, knitting wounds and reinforcing the line. Sensing the opening, Aiko rains down offensive spells, softening the beast just enough for Amanagawa to deliver an overpowered finishing blow. As the behemoth dissolves into ash, the class erupts in cheers, as if they just grabbed their first milk containers in high school. Down in the true depths, the mood is much heavier, as Hajime is still processing Oscar's message. The ancient mage admits he doesn't care why Hajime came here, but he's handing over his power anyway. He has one request: don't use this strength for petty evil. As Oscar's image flickers out, the red magic circle beneath Hajime flares with a violent light. Just then, a massive barrage of information hits Hajime like a physical blow. The pain is blinding, but the revelation claims that history is a lie. The Mavericks weren't the villains the church claimed they were. They were the only ones who saw the gods for what they really were, corrupt puppet masters playing with human lives. This revelation grants Hajime a new, forbidden form of magic, the ability to infuse minerals with mana. It's the birth of a master craftsman. With this information, he and Yue spend hours testing the limits of this power, though even Yue, a prodigy, finds the creation magic exhausting her dangling rice cakes. A few minutes later, they pause to pay their respects. They give Oscar a proper burial, a quiet moment of humanity in a place of stone and blood. While exploring the rest of the facility, Hajime finds a hidden library and a peculiar key tucked into the finger bones of a skeleton. It ends up opening a level filled with relics that look more like high-tech machinery than fantasy artifacts. Just then, Hajime looks at Yue and makes a call. His goal is still to get home safely, but they are completely stuck at this moment, so they will need the sanctuary to train. In the coming days, Hajime builds himself a new mechanical arm that functions better than the limb he lost. In the meantime, this chick cooks for him, accepting him as an alpha. At one point, Hajime slides a ring onto Yue's finger, hoping to clap that cheek one of these days. In a moment of revelation, Hajime realizes that the Holy Church and the kingdoms of this world will never let him live in peace. They will call him a monster or an enemy of the faith to protect their interests. He then looks at Yue, vowing to protect her even if the whole world stands in their way. The following day, a rabbit-eared girl named Shea is introduced, but she seems to be in a state of pure panic. She is desperately scrambling up a slope to escape a two-headed dinosaur that is chasing the smell coming out of her juicy groove. Just as it seems her luck has run out, a massive burst of energy erupts across the landscape. Out of the blue, Hajime and Yue descend from the sky, making an entrance like James Bond, making the predatory dinosaurs flee the scene. With the immediate threat gone, Hajime and Yue take a moment to appreciate the fact that they have finally returned to the surface world after their long journey. Unfortunately, their celebration is short-lived because an incredibly high-energy Shea rushes toward them and begins talking like she hosts a podcast with Joe Rogan. Hajime is instantly gratified by her loud personality and attempts to walk away, but the persistent rabbit girl lunges forward and clings to his leg. She tearfully begs for his assistance, pleading with him to save her family from impending doom. Hajime remains cold and logical, questioning why he should stick his neck out for a family of rabbits he has never met. The peace of the forest is interrupted once more when the dinosaur returns for a second attempt. Without breaking a sweat, Hajime uses his legendary firearm to neutralize the creature in a single strike. Despite the display of lethal force, Shea remains attached to his leg, prompting Hajime to strike her dumb, empty, disgusting head. She ignores the physical rebuff and continues her frantic pitch, even going so far as to argue that her feminine curves are superior to his girlfriend's, and that he owes it to her to at least listen to her request. While Hajime finds her line of reasoning to be completely idiotic and smacks her again, her stubbornness eventually wins out. Exhausted by her efforts, the duo finally gives up and agrees to hear her story. Now, Shea begins to explain her dire situation, revealing that she was originally cast out from her own tribe. Not long after her exile, her people were captured by monsters. The problem is that her kin are essentially defenseless because they cannot manipulate mana. However, Shea is a rare exception to this rule. She can control mana effortlessly and even possesses a specialized magical gift known as Future Sight. This ability to see into the future is the exact reason she knew Hajime and Yue were coming and was able to identify them the moment they arrived. Hajime is still largely bored by the conversation and uses his magical ring to manifest a motorcycle, intending to leave his dumb chick alone. Realizing she has very little time, a desperate Shea blocks his path. She reveals that she knows his ultimate destination is the Great Tree and promises to act as his personal guide if he helps her. While Hajime wants to travel by himself, Yue steps in and convinces him to take the offer. Finally, he agrees to the deal, and the trio begins their trek through the woods. Meanwhile, the situation for Shea's family has become critical, as they are being hunted by a pack of monsters as if they were running from ICE agents. Just as a massive beast corners a young child and prepares to make a meal out of her, Hajime arrives with perfect timing and ends the monster's life. Ruthlessly, he launches Shea into the air to serve as live bait, drawing the attention of every monster in the vicinity so he can transform them into piles of meat. In a matter of minutes, the threat is neutralized and the tribe is finally safe from the predatory monsters. That evening, the group experiences its first peaceful night of sleep in months. Shea tries to show her appreciation to Hajime, but he maintains his nonchalant personality. The following morning, the members of the tribe approach Hajime with a request. They want to become strong enough to protect themselves and ask him to train them. Surprisingly, Hajime agrees and begins teaching them how to fight with the mindset of a true warrior. The tribe members follow his lead with absolute devotion, and even Shea manages to pick up several new combat skills during the session. Once the training is complete, Shea makes a formal request to join the duo on the rest of their journey. When Hajime demands to know why she is so intent on following them, she claims that she wants to gobble up his biological rod passionately. On the other hand, the previously peaceful tribespeople have become somewhat aggressive, hunting down and eliminating every monster they encounter in the area. This radical change in their behavior slightly concerns Shea, leading her to wonder exactly what kind of influence Hajime had on them. A few days later, the group reaches the great tree that had been dead for centuries. Deep within the site, they discover a stone pillar featuring the same craftsmanship as the one found in Oscar's palace. Just then, placing his ring upon the pillar, Hajime receives a revelation. To obtain the power of regeneration, they must first conquer the remaining 4 labyrinths. As they prepare to move on to their next destination, Hajime says his goodbyes to the tribesmen, who have now taken to calling him Master out of respect. They offer to travel with him to provide support, but Hajime tells them to park their disgusting dumpers where they are. During this departure, Shea finds herself lost in a childhood memory of a conversation with her mother. She recalls asking if her unique abilities made her a monster or something better. Her mother had reassured her that being different was perfectly fine and highlighted that Shea possessed talents that no one else in the tribe could claim. During that same memory, her mother spoke of the future, predicting that Shea would eventually encounter some brilliant warriors from beyond the forest who would befriend her. Returning to the present moment, the duo finally accepts Shea as a permanent member of their traveling party. While Hajime makes it clear that he doesn't share her romantic interests, Shea does not care, as she is confident she will lick his flagpole soon. Following the events of their previous journey, the trio advances toward a deep gorge to locate the entrance to the next labyrinth. While Hajime and Yue are preoccupied with analyzing their map to pinpoint the exact location, Shea abruptly announces that she needs a moment to shave her forest and use vibrating equipment down there. However, Hajime dismisses her. Despite the rejection, Shea's wandering eyes lead her to a hidden cave tucked behind a mountain, marked by a peculiar signboard. As they begin to probe the area for a way into the labyrinth, Shea inadvertently leans against a section of the wall that collapses under her weight, causing her to tumble through. Soon after this awkward encounter, the group discovers a stone that possesses the uncanny ability to speak. Frustrated by the stone's mysterious rambling, Shea attempts to silence it by bringing her massive hammer down upon it. Yet the voice keeps buzzing. As they continue their trek through a long corridor, Hajime inadvertently triggers a hidden floor trap. Heavy gates slam shut, sealing them in, and a massive boulder begins thundering down a staircase directly toward them. To their horror, they realize that their magical abilities have been neutralized in this specific area. Thinking quickly, Hajime draws his firearms and shatters the incoming rock into fragments, but the threat is far from over as a continuous stream of boulders begins to follow. Shea joins the fray, utilizing her immense strength to smash the stones aside with her hammer, while also reacting just in time to intercept a massive blade swinging toward the group. Realizing they need to find an exit fast, Hajime scoops Yue up like a sack of potatoes and sprints at full speed, with Shea trailing closely behind. However, after a frantic run, they are shocked to find themselves right back where they started. Realizing the labyrinth has been leading them in a loop, the group eventually manages to descend to a lower level, where they find themselves surrounded by a legion of mechanical knights. The sight of these metallic warriors gives Hajime an instinctive sense of dread, and he immediately commands the girls to launch a strike. A chaotic battle ensues as the trio utilizes every skill in their arsenal to dismantle the automatons. Yet, for every knight they destroy, more seem to emerge to take their place. Seeing no end to the reinforcements, they run towards a moving platform that carries them toward the upper reaches of the chamber. Upon reaching the top, they are greeted by a gargantuan that introduces itself as Milady Ryzen. This revelation confuses Hajime, as the records left behind by Oscar Orcus indicated that Milady was a human who had perished long ago. The mechanical entity seems impressed that Hajime managed to conquer Oscar's trials, but Hajime is in no mood for pleasantries. He demands clarity on the situation, making it clear that he is only interested in obtaining ancient magic and will resort to violence if necessary. The robot maintains that it is indeed the genuine Milady Ryzen and informs Hajime that he must answer several questions before she will grant him what he seeks. Hajime escalates the situation by pulling out a rocket launcher, Following his lead, Shea leaps into the air with her milk containers and delivers a crushing blow to the robot's arm with her hammer. Hajime continues the attack by firing precision rounds at the creature's core and joints. The robot eventually collapses, leading the trio to believe the battle is won. However, as the dust settles, they are stunned to see the enemy standing perfectly intact without a single scratch. Now, the battle intensifies as a flurry of rocks is launched toward them, forcing Hajime to grab both Yue and Shea and leap to safety. For a moment, the robotic entity believes it has emerged victorious, but Hajime suddenly reappears atop a nearby pillar. This time, the three of them execute a perfectly synchronized and lethal strategy. The force of the impact travels deep into the machine, shattering its core and finally silencing the irritating mechanical guardian. In the quiet moments following the intense combat, Yue affectionately pets Shea like a golden retriever, offering her praise for her performance. This rare display of kindness deeply moves Shea, who becomes quite emotional. However, the fallen robot uses the last of its energy to deliver a warning. If Hajime truly intends to master ancient magic, he will eventually have to stand against the gods themselves. Proceeding further into the inner sanctum, the trio finally encounters the true Milady Ryzen, who takes the form of a small, doll-like girl. She attempts to charm them with a cute and innocent persona, but Shea isn't buying the act and promptly smacks her over the head with her hammer. Once things settle down, Milady explains that while Yue already possesses the necessary aptitude to control ancient magic, Hajime and Shea still lack the required strength to handle it. So, she grants Hajime a unique ring, but he remains unimpressed and begins physically shaking the girl like an Indian scammer, demanding more valuable artifacts. A few minutes later, as the group is busy gathering treasures, Milady loses her patience and pulls a hidden lever. This triggers a massive torrent of water that floods the chamber, sweeping the trio away. They soon find themselves tossed into a river inhabited by bizarre fish. While Hajime and Yue manage to reach the riverbank without much trouble, the clumsy Shea finds herself in distress and begins to drown. Fortunately, Hajime pulls her from the water and performs a moist action, successfully bringing her back to consciousness. With the ordeal behind them, the three travelers head to a nearby hotel to rest for the night. As they begin to discuss their sleeping arrangements, Yue suggests that Shea should take a room of her own to give them some space. Shea quickly rejects this proposal, suggesting instead that Yue should be the one to stay in a separate room so that she can spend the night alone with Hajime and his sausage. Unfortunately, Shea makes this scandalous suggestion far too loudly, leaving the surrounding hotel guests and bystanders completely speechless. Several days later, Hajime and his friends are summoned to the residence of Chang, the head of the local adventurers guild. Chang is shocked to realize the trio navigated the treacherous Ryzen gorge and asked for their assistance with a critical situation. He explains that a survey team consisting of 3 adventurers has gone missing in the northern mountain range. The urgency of the mission is heightened by the fact that one of the lost individuals is Will Kudita, whose father is a high-ranking count. Chang elaborates that the missing party encountered a particularly powerful threat, making Hajime's specific skills necessary for a successful rescue. Though Hajime initially shows no interest in helping, he changes his mind once Chang offers to massage his sausage every day for a week. Hajime sets 2 strict conditions for his cooperation. He demands updated status for his entire party and a guarantee that the guild will fulfill any future favor he asks for without hesitation. When Chang finally agrees to these terms, the trio prepares to depart for the mountains. As they travel, the group stops for a meal, and Hajime suggests they find some rice. At a nearby establishment, the teacher Aiko is dining with her students, encouraging them for their efforts and urging them to stay focused on their tasks. During their meal, the innkeeper approaches them with a worried expression. He explains that they are struggling to maintain their food supplies, specifically spices, because the trade routes through the mountains have become too dangerous. Rumors of monster activity have hindered their business, and the adventurers sent to investigate have yet to return. However, the situation takes a dramatic turn when Hajime's party enters the same hotel. Aiko immediately recognizes her former student and is overcome with emotion, but Hajime simply stares at her milk containers, claiming he is no longer the person she remembers. Despite his nonchalant personality, Aiko remains persistent, grabbing his arm and demanding to know what has happened to him. Hajime ignores the tension and sits down to order a plate of curry. When Aiko asks about the identity of the 2 girls accompanying him, Shea and Yue bluntly state that they are his side pieces. This revelation leaves Aiko in a state of shock and disapproval, as she begins to lecture Hajime on the immorality of his lifestyle. They eventually share a meal, but Hajime remains tight-lipped about his journey, offering only vague answers that leave Aiko frustrated. Just then, an arrogant knight approaches their table to criticize Hajime for his lack of respect toward his comrades. The knight then turns his insults toward Shea, mocking her rabbit ears and suggesting they should be trimmed to make her look more human. He attempts to intimidate Yue as well, but she mocks his stature, calling him a small man. Infuriated, the knight moves to draw his sword, but Hajime is faster, firing a round into the man's hand as a stern warning against further aggression. During the commotion, one of Aiko's students watches in awe, reflecting on how much Hajime has changed from the fragile boy who once protected her. Hajime firmly tells Aiko that he has no desire to reunite with his old classmates, and warns her not to cross his path again. Despite Hajime's rejection, Aiko vows to find a way to bring him back to his senses. Later that night, while Aiko is reflecting in her room, Hajime suddenly appears, having used his new skills to bypass the room's security. He explains that he has come to share the truth behind his refusal, and to slide his sausage inside her body. He then recounts the history of the world, explaining that ancient gods once instigated a global conflict for their own amusement, pitting the various races against one another. However, the gods used the church to frame the liberators as villains, leading humanity to hunt them down. The survivors realized they couldn't win through force alone, so they established various trials across the world, hoping a future champion would eventually use the power gained from these labyrinths to end the gods' tyranny. Hajime clarifies that his only interest is returning to his own world, and the labyrinths are simply the means to achieve that goal. As he prepares to leave, Aiko mentions that Kaori has never stopped believing in him, and is currently training in the labyrinth to properly massage his sausage. However, Hajime reveals that his original fall into the abyss was not an accident, but the result of being intentionally pushed by a classmate. The following morning, as Hajime's group prepares for their rescue mission, Aiko and her students arrive and ask to join the search. Though Hajime refuses the idea at first, Aiko's refusal to back down eventually wears him out. So, using his ring, Hajime constructs a large armored truck to accommodate the entire group, and they soon set out on their journey. As the journey continues, Aiko eventually drifts off to sleep, unknowingly resting her head on Hajime's shoulder. Yue and Shea watch this scene furiously, and when Yue eventually points out that Hajime is being uncharacteristically gentle with their teacher, he offers a pragmatic explanation. He reminds them that Aiko has gone out of her way to support him in the past, and he believes in settling his debts of kindness whenever possible. Their travels eventually led them into a rugged, rocky terrain, prompting Hajime to deploy his advanced drone system. These mechanical scouts fan out across the sky, using their sensors to sweep the surrounding area for any signs of human life or hidden monstrous threats. It isn't long before the drones transmit footage of abandoned equipment, including bags and shields scattered near the base of a steep cliff. Upon reaching the site to investigate in person, the trio discovers a massive, lingering footprint, which Yue identifies as belonging to an exceptionally large and formidable creature. Then, the group follows the trail of clues until they arrive at a thundering waterfall. Hajime's heightened senses alert him to something hidden behind the curtain of water, so he instructs Yue to clear a path using her juicy, pink rice cakes. Inside, they are shocked to find Will Kudeta lying unconscious on the cold stone floor. Rather than a gentle awakening, Hajime simply pokes the boy's nose until he jolts awake in a state of pure panic. Once he comes to his senses, Hajime introduces himself and explains that they were dispatched by the Adventurers Guild to ensure his safety. Shockingly, Will is far from grateful, as he is consumed by Survivor's guilt, tearfully explaining that a black dragon ambushed his party and wiped out all of his friends. As darkness begins to fall over the mountains, the group prepares to make their exit, but Hajime's internal radar suddenly signals an immediate threat. Right on cue, the black dragon they were warned about crashes into the area like P. Diddy's victims, launching a surprise attack. Hajime quickly manifests a protective shield to keep the group from being incinerated, while Yue and Shea immediately jump into the fray to assist. Shea charges forward with her massive hammer, delivering a crushing blow to the dragon's side, while Yue follows up with a powerful magical blast. Together, their coordinated efforts manage to knock the massive beast to the ground. However, the victory is short-lived as the dragon lets out a deafening roar and pulls itself back up, seemingly unfazed by the damage it has already sustained. The fight escalates as Shea attempts another strike, only for the dragon to whip its tail around with enough force to send her flying into a nearby river. Hajime responds with a relentless barrage of bullets, but the creature remains persistent, charging up a concentrated beam of energy. Recognizing that the dragon is strategically targeting the weakest members of the group, Hajime orders Aiko to evacuate everyone else to a secure location. Once the area is clear of bystanders, Hajime switches to his sniper rifle and fires a precision shot into the beast, resulting in a colossal explosion that rocks the entire mountainside. In the chaotic aftermath, Hajime rushes in, landing a powerful physical blow to the dragon's stomach before detonating an explosive charge near its body. Despite the heavy damage, the dragon continues to struggle, though Shea manages to pin it down with another heavy strike from her hammer. With the beast finally immobilized, Hajime drives a metal rod into a highly sensitive area of the dragon's anatomy. To everyone's shock, the creature lets out a high-pitched feminine scream, revealing that this monster is actually a member of the dragonborn race. She desperately pleads with Hajime to remove the rod, explaining that her mana is nearly depleted and she will soon be forced to return to her human form. However, instead of showing mercy, Hajime maintains a smug expression and continues to twist the rod, nearly causing the dragonborn to lose consciousness from the sheer shock of the pain. Eventually, the dragonborn's will breaks, and she confesses that she was not acting of her own volition. She claims that a mysterious puppet master took control of her mind and forced her to attack the adventurers against her will. While Will remains skeptical and accuses her of lying to save herself, the Dragonborn insists that her race is fundamentally incapable of dishonesty. Yue, drawing on her centuries of life experience, confirms that dragons are indeed honest creatures, leading the group to believe her story, touched that someone like Yue is defending her. But Yue quickly humbles her by revealing that she is actually over 300 years old. Despite the explanation, Will is still reluctant to forgive her for the lives lost, and the Dragonborn agrees that she deserves punishment. However, she asks for a stay of execution, as there is a much greater catastrophe approaching. She reveals that a shadowy figure is currently leading a massive army of 60,000 monsters toward a nearby village, and she wants to stop this abomination. Hajime is entirely unconvinced and refuses to let her go, and pushes the rod further, but Yue intervenes at the last second like a toxic ex-girlfriend. She firmly believes the Dragonborn is telling the truth and urges Hajime to release her. Finally, swayed by Yue's persistence, Hajime slowly pulls the rod out. As soon as the Dragonborn is free, she transforms into a stunningly beautiful woman with shiny melons who introduces herself as Tio. Surprisingly, Tio is not angry about the agonizing treatment she received. In fact, it turns out she is a massive masochist who actually enjoyed the pain Hajime inflicted on her. Tio then reminds the group that the massive monster army is approaching at high speed and will likely reach the village in just 2 days. She urges them to begin evacuating the local population as quickly as possible. Will adds his own desperate pleas for Hajime's help, but Hajime remains cold, stating that his only job was to rescue Will and not to save an entire village from an army. As he prepares to leave the scene, a physically drained Tio claims she cannot move and needs Hajime to carry her. Forced to get the job done, Hajime begins dragging her across the ground like a sack of potatoes, but he is shocked to find out that Tio seems to enjoy this treatment. With a massive army of monsters closing in on the village, Aiko desperately begs Hajime to step in, knowing that a slaughter is inevitable without his help. Furiously, Hajime questions her motives, asking if she's truly willing to put her own students at risk for the sake of total strangers. While Aiko maintains that her students are her priority, she simply can't stand by and watch innocent lives be erased. She also takes a moment to express her deep regret, admitting she failed to support Hajime when he was at his lowest point. Hajime presses her further, asking if she will remain his teacher regardless of what he chooses to do next. She quietly confirms she will, though she pleads with him to at least hear her out. Without another word, Hajime walks away to begin preparations for the coming onslaught. He immediately starts constructing a powerful magical barrier around the perimeter, like a blue-collar worker from Alabama, and the villagers quickly join the effort. While the women and children seek safety during the evacuation, the rest of the town helps with food and supply distribution. As night falls, Aiko checks in on him to offer her assistance, but Hajime remains composed, simply stating that he is ready for the fight. While Hajime is busy prepping his missiles, Tio approaches him with a desperate request to fight by his side. She is fully committed to doing whatever he asks, even going as far as calling him master in hopes of getting her groove wet that night. Hajime tries to brush her off with harsh words, but his cold demeanor only seems to entice her, as she's been obsessed with him ever since they first fought. As the darkness deepens and the monster army arrives, Hajime pulls a surprise move by announcing to the villagers that Aiko is actually the goddess of agriculture. He claims she is the one who summoned the heroes to protect them, causing the villagers to burst into a frantic chant of her name. Aiko is left bright red with embarrassment, but Hajime doubles down, declaring that their win is a certainty now that they have divine protection. The battle kicks off with Hajime picking off targets with his signature sniper rifle, while Yue and Shea provide heavy fire with rocket launchers. Tio joins in from above, utilizing her dragon magic to blaze the enemies. The battlefield quickly turns chaotic, as fireballs and tornadoes are everywhere. As the monsters start reappearing again and again, the heroes eventually begin to feel the strain. Once Hajime's ammo runs dry, he hops onto his motorcycle with Shea like an Andrew Tate fan for a high-speed direct charge. Now, Yue clears the path ahead with an electric dragon spell, allowing Hajime and Shea to dive deep into the enemy lines. Hajime then tears through the monsters without taking a single hit, while Shea uses her immense strength to crush anything in her path. Deep within the enemy ranks, they finally corner the hooded figure orchestrating the attack. After Hajime takes down the man's wolf companion, he is stunned to see the face underneath the hood. It's Shimizu, one of Aiko's missing students. Once the dust settles and the monsters are defeated, Shimizu is brought before Aiko to answer for his crimes. He confesses that he betrayed humanity for the demons because they actually made him feel important. He believed that by killing Aiko, he would become a hero in the eyes of the demons. But his plan failed despite having an army of 60,000 behind him. Confused by Hajime's overwhelming power, Shimizu questions who he really is. Despite his betrayal, Aiko shows him compassion, taking his hand and acknowledging his inner pain. She compares his desire for attention to that of a TikTok influencer, but reminds him that siding with monsters to kill his teacher was the wrong path. He suddenly strikes, taking Aiko hostage at syringe point and threatening to inject her with a deadly toxin unless everyone disarms. While the others hesitate, Hajime refuses to drop his weapons, knowing a trap when he sees one. In the heat of the moment, Shea moves in to save Aiko, but an unexpected shot from an unknown assailant hits Shimizu from behind. Hajime spots the mystery shooter fleeing on a dragon and fires back, though the target manages to escape. During the struggle, Aiko is accidentally stuck with the poisoned needle and begins to fade away. To save her life, Hajime drinks holy water and transfers it to her through a kiss, slowly bringing her back from the brink. As the traitorous Shimizu lies nearby, bleeding out from his wound, Aiko selflessly asks Hajime to save him. Hajime firmly declines, noting that the boy had just tried to take her life. To end the threat once and for all, Hajime fires several rounds into Shimizu, finishing him off. Aiko is left in shock by the cold execution, but Hajime simply tells her to move on and departs. On the journey back, Will asks why Hajime felt the need to unalive someone who was already dying. Hajime stays silent, but Yue explains the true reason. If Hajime hadn't pulled the trigger, Aiko would have spent her entire life drowning in guilt over her students' actions and death, and decided to take the emotional burden like an alpha male. Deep within the damp, sunless tunnels of the city's sewer system, a group of shadowy figures gathers to finalize a clandestine deal. These are men who thrive in the underworld, and they are currently boasting about their latest prize, a rare monster girl they've managed to snatch. While these criminals plot their next move, Hajime is busy wrapping up his own business on the surface. He successfully delivers Will to the guildmaster, fulfilling the terms of his previous agreement. However, before heading out, he makes a specific request for an additional status plate, ensuring that Tio is officially registered alongside the rest of his party. Tio takes a moment to remind him of a promise he once made, that he would give her a proper tour of the city if she dedicated herself to her training. Hajime acknowledges this, but doesn't let his guard down, noting that there are suspicious figures like Donald Trump lurking in the shadows. In this moment of observation, Tio's mind drifts back to the past. She remembers the wisdom her father shared with her years ago. He had warned her that, while their enemies were formidable and full of malice, they were not invincible. He carried a deep-seated belief that eventually a champion would emerge with enough power to challenge the authority of the gods themselves. Returning to the present, Hajime finally decides to make good on his promise to Shea, taking her out for a walk through the city. The two of them wander the streets, looking very much like a couple dealing with fertility issues. Eventually, Shea's curiosity leads them to a local aquarium. It is here that they encounter an unexpected sight, a talking fish named Layman. Hajime immediately starts bickering with the aquatic creature, but rather than being intimidated, the fish bites back with a series of sharp insults that actually earn Hajime's respect. The two of them end up falling into a surprisingly long and deep conversation, chatting like old friends. The lighthearted moment eventually comes to an end as Hajime and Shea prepare to return Layman to the river. While this is happening, Yue and Tio are handling the more domestic side of adventuring, picking up supplies at the local market. As they browse the stalls, Tio strikes up a conversation about the growing bond between Hajime and Shea. She asks the vampire princess if she feels any jealousy regarding their closeness. However, Yoho knows her dumpers are better than hers, and claims that she has no issue with it at all. On the other side of town, Hajime and Shea are enjoying some ice cream when the topic of Tio comes up. Shea asks if Hajime is actually glad to have the dragonkin on the team. Hajime is quick to correct her, claiming that Tio didn't so much join as she did force her way in. He admits that she isn't a malicious person at her core, but her constant dirty behavior is a lot to handle. Suddenly, the conversation is cut short as Hajime's senses spike. He detects a foul, lingering presence originating from beneath the streets. Following his instincts, he and Shea descend into the sewers to investigate. Their search eventually leads them to a hidden cell, where they discover a young girl locked away in the dark. It becomes clear that she was a victim of the very traffickers Lehman warned them about. Hajime rescues the child and brings her back to their room to recover, and when she finally wakes up, he asks for her name. The girl introduces herself as Mew, and in return, Hajime introduces himself as Shea. Seeing that the girl is malnourished and frightened, the group helps her get cleaned up, provides her with a hot meal, and dries her hair. Mew is visibly moved by their kindness, feeling a genuine sense of joy in the company of these strangers. She explains that she was torn away from her family by the bad people who haunt the city's shadows. Now that she is safe, Shea wonders what their next step should be. After a minute of intense thought, Hajime suggests that they turn her over to the city guards so they can handle her protection. As he turns to leave, the little girl asks him through her tears if he hates her. Hajime offers no response and walks away in silence. However, as Hajime and Shea make their way back to their lodgings, an explosion rocks the nearby area. Fearing the worst, they race back to the guard station, only to find a gruesome scene. Guards have all been slaughtered and the facility is in ruins. They then see a message on the wall saying if Hajime wants to see Mew alive again, he must hand over the bunny girl to the kidnappers. This cowardly move sends Hajime into a furious rage, and he swears that he will track down Mew and make the perpetrators pay a heavy price. Meanwhile, Yue and Tio are having a quiet moment over coffee when the wall next to them suddenly shatters. Hajime bursts through the rubble like a South Indian actor trying to save his baby brother. He quickly catches the two girls up on the situation, explaining that he tried to beat information out of a lead, but came up empty-handed. He then rallies the entire team, and they begin a citywide manhunt to locate the traffickers' hideout. Moments later, they reach a concealed underground hideout where the gang members are relaxing, unaware of the storm heading their way. The girls don't hold back, using their devastating magical abilities to wipe out the traffickers. While they handle the main force, Hajime moves deeper into the complex. He finds Miu being mistreated by one of the men, and, without a second of hesitation, he guns the man down. Overwhelmed with relief, Miu sprints toward her savior and throws her arms around his disgustingly smelly body. Hajime takes her into his arms and leaps into the sky, allowing her to look down as the rest of his team completely dismantles the trafficking operation below. Once the threat is neutralized and the ring is destroyed, Hajime returns to the ground where the others are waiting. Mayu is introduced to the rest of the group and immediately gravitates toward Yue, hugging her as if she were her own mother. When she turns back to Hajime, she initially tries to call him Big Brother, a title that Hajime immediately rejects. He tells her to just use his name, but the little girl calls him Sugar Daddy instead. A few days later, Hajime leads the group out of town in his customized vehicle, while Shea takes to the road on her motorcycle. She then starts showing off, thinking she will get a Red Bull sponsorship. Inside the car, little Miu is eager to help and begs to take a turn behind the wheel. Though Hajime refuses her request for now, he promises to teach her the ropes of driving later on. Their journey eventually leads them to a local market, a place that triggers a wave of memories for Hajime regarding his former classmates and his life before the fall. The party eventually makes its way to see the guild leader, a man named Loha, so Hajime can deliver a formal letter from Chang. As Loha reads the contents, he finds the information nearly impossible to process. The idea that a young man who looks like a common adventurer could have single-handedly decimated 60,000 monsters and dismantled an entire criminal organization in a single afternoon seems like a complete fantasy. Just as Loha is questioning the validity of the letter, a frantic young man bursts into the office with an urgent message regarding a monster outbreak within the labyrinth. When the messenger catches sight of Hajime, his eyes widen in immediate recognition. Hajime identifies him as Endo, one of his old classmates from Earth. Despite the shock, Endo is relieved to see him alive and immediately shifts into a desperate plea for help. He explains that their former classmates are currently trapped deep within the labyrinth, and if reinforcements don't arrive soon, no one will make it out alive. Amanagawa and his party are navigating the treacherous depths of the labyrinth when they stumble upon a particularly ominous section. Shizuku's instincts immediately flare up, warning the group that something terrible is about to happen. Her fears are confirmed when they find the floor painted with monster blood, suggesting that a predator far more dangerous than the typical dungeon denizens is lurking nearby with his hanging dangle out in the open. Out of the darkness, a demon chick accompanied by a strange raven makes her presence known. She doesn't attack immediately. Instead, she tries to manipulate them, offering Amanagawa's team a chance to defect to the side of the demons. She even claims that one of their own has already accepted the offer, hoping to shatter their resolve. Amanagawa flatly refuses her offer and prepares for battle. In response, the demon summons a wave of massive, high-level monsters that launch a coordinated attack. Kari and the others fight with everything they have, but their efforts feel futile. No matter how much damage they deal, the monsters seem indestructible, largely because the demon's raven familiar continuously heals their wounds with dark magic. Realizing that they are completely outmatched, the group decides on a desperate gambit. They task Endo with using his specialized camouflage ability to slip past the enemy lines and find help on the surface. While he is reluctant to abandon his friends in such a dire state, he understands that he is their only hope for survival and makes his move. As the battle rages on, the situation for those left behind turns tragic. During a chaotic exchange, one of the younger girls in the group is struck by a cat-like monster, turning her body into cold stone. Shizuku realizes they cannot win this fight and demands an immediate retreat, even going as far as to slap Amanagawa across the face like an Asian mother-in-law. Meanwhile, Endo manages to reach the 17th floor where he encounters Captain Meld and explains the crisis, but their meeting is cut short when a monster discovers them, proving that Endo's stealth wasn't as perfect as he hoped. Meld steps up to hold the line, ordering Endo to continue to the surface while he faces the enemy alone. Back inside the dungeon, the surviving students have managed to put some distance between themselves and the demon, but they are exhausted. A few members of the group, terrified and weary of the bloodshed, begin to wonder if joining the demons might actually be the only way to survive. Their debate is interrupted by the arrival of Captain Meld, who is clinging to life and covered in horrific wounds. But before he can offer a full report, a monster strikes from the shadows, ending the captain's life on the spot. The demon woman reappears shortly after, gloating over the fallen and preparing to finish off the rest of the humans. At this point, Amanagawa is driven by grief and fury, and he activates his limit break ability and begins tearing through the monsters with newfound speed. Now, the scene returns to the guild office, where Endo is on his knees, begging Hajime to show some mercy to their old friends. But Hajime remains cold, asserting that he owes these people nothing and views them as mere cockroaches that need to be eliminated. However, the influence of the girls at his party begins to weigh on him. Back in the dungeon, Amanagawa's surge of power nearly ends the fight as he shatters the demon's barrier. However, a momentary lapse in focus, caused by a personal photo falling from the demon's pendant, allows a monster to land a devastating blow that sends him flying. With Kaori and Shizuku exhausted and on the brink of death, they hold hands and prepare for the end. But just as the final blow is about to fall, a massive iron rod screams through the air, impaling the monsters and unaliving them in an instant. As the tension breaks and everyone breathes a sigh of relief, Hajime makes his entrance like the Undertaker. It is revealed that just moments before his dramatic entrance, Hajime and his party were racing through the labyrinth's dark corridors, guided by a frantic Endo. Sensing that every second wasted brought his former classmates closer to death, Hajime decided to bypass the winding paths entirely. He then deployed a massive drilling apparatus, carving a direct vertical shaft through the floor. Without hesitation, he and his team plunged into the depths, landing directly in the middle of the chamber, where the demon woman had finally cornered her prey. The impact was instantaneous. As Hajime neutralized the immediate threats, Kaori recognized him through the dust, though Shizuku could hardly reconcile the legendary figure before her with the boy she once knew. His appearance, defined by stark white hair and a cold, bionic arm, rendered him nearly unrecognizable to the rest of the group. While his team moved to establish a defensive perimeter around the students, Hajime focused his attention on the demon orchestrating the slaughter. He then offered a single warning: leave or die. But the demon does not give a flying duck and chooses to fight till the end. Now, Hajime activates his specialized magic and starts picking off invisible monsters. The battlefield quickly becomes a display of overwhelming force as he combined his firearms with high-level magical strikes. When a massive turtle-like beast is sent to crush him, Hajime redirects the momentum of the attack back toward the demon, wounding her milk cartons in the process. He then systematically eliminated both the turtle and the demon's raven companion, stripping away her defenses and leaving her exposed. Watching from the sidelines, Amanagawa struggled to believe that this powerful, unrecognizable warrior was truly the classmate they had left for dead. The denial was even more intense for Hiyama, who is furious at the prospect of Hajime's return. However, there is no time for questions, as the demon conjures a fresh wave of reinforcements. When Hajime's party steps in, Yue tears through the ranks with a localized black hole. Shea wields her massive hammer with the strength of a god, and Tio unleashes her dragonkin fury to dismantle anything left standing. In the heat of the fray, Hajime notices a serpent monster lunging toward Shizuku, so he throws a specialized sword her way, which she uses to effortlessly dismantle the creature. The demon, desperate and confused by Hajime's nature, attempted to crush him beneath a massive boulder. This prompted Mew to yell out, "Sugar Daddy!" a revelation that sends Kaori into a state of total frenzy. At this point, the demon thinks she has won, but her victory is short-lived because Hajime emerges from the rubble and pins her down by hurling a heavy rod in her path. She questions his humanity, only for Hajime to bluntly admit that he has moved past such labels. After disabling her by shooting both of her legs, he demands to know her goals. She remains defiant, claiming her lover will eventually avenge her, but Hajime is unimpressed. He declares that he will challenge the gods themselves if they stand in his way. Despite Amanagawa's desperate pleas for mercy toward a defenseless enemy, Hajime follows through on his own code and executes the demon on the spot. While the stupid injured weaklings are healing, Hajime and Yue share a brief, intimate moment that is quickly interrupted by a jealous Shea. At that moment, Kaori approaches him, while her emotions seem to be boiling over. Through tears of joy and regret, she apologizes for failing to save him in the past and throws her arms around his biological shotgun. This display of affection immediately puts her on the radar of the other women in the group, sparking a new wave of tension. As they finally exit the labyrinth, the ideological rift between Hajime and Amanagawa widens. Amanagawa condemns the execution of the demon, but Hajime dismisses his complaints as the whining of someone who only cares about being a hero. He then offers a harsh reality check. In this world, it is either kill or be killed. When the group meets the guild leader who has arrived late with an unnecessary army, Kaori makes a life-changing announcement. She declares that she is leaving her old team to join Hajime's party. Hearing this, Yue challenges her, doubting she can handle the intensity of their journey, but Kaori holds her ground. The tension escalates further when Kaori openly confesses her love for Hajime. Though he flatly states that his heart already belongs to Yue, Kaori's resolve does not waver. This results in a competitive stare and the birth of a new rivalry in the group. Just then, Kaori starts interrogating Hajime about Mew, accusing him of becoming a Japanese Jeffrey Epstein wannabe, and demanding to know which of the girls is the mother. However, Shizuku manages to drag the hysterical girl away to restore some order. The following morning, the new expanded party sets off in the vehicle. While Kaori tries to claim the seat next to Hajime, she is quickly reminded of the established side chick hierarchy. Comment down below milk containers if you watch till the end. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video.